Welcome to the Brothers in Influence podcast, where we stand to encourage, inspire, and add value in the areas of life, leadership, and community. I'm your host, Ian Williams.
And I'm Sherrod Ledet.
And I'm Shante Price, and together we are the Brothers.
And we are privileged to bring you a special guest who's going to bring the influence. Let's get it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest today happens to be a brother by the name of Dr. Randy Whetstone Junior. He is a clinical assistant professor at the University of Louisville, and he is passionate about empowering people all around the globe. As a higher education professional, he strives to instill the necessary knowledge and tools into individuals to inspire them to reach their full potential. We love it here. As an educator, he is responsible for equipping leaders aging range from 18 to 70 plus from multiple backgrounds and experiences with the necessary knowledge, skills, and abilities to lead any organization effectively and efficiently. His teaching areas and research interests include diversity and inclusion, measuring effectiveness, and conflict management. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I have the man himself, Dr. Randy Whetstone. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. You know, this has been something that's been in the works for a little bit, right? We talked, and we're just glad to have you finally with us on this episode of the Brothers in Influence podcast. Clearly, from your bio, you're our type of people, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so go ahead. Yes, sir. So what I usually like to jump off with from when I do my interviews is I like to get an exclusive. I like to go deep a little quicker, you know, get past the small talk. So I like to ask the people I'm working with, tell us something about you that most people don't know.
You know, that's a good question. I would have to say I'm a little eccentric. I can be odd, peculiar in some ways, meaning I got like this crazy appetite for curiosity, right? So I just love to learn about different things, and I try to see kind of how I've been formed and fashioned from a gift and talent standpoint to see how I can tap into just multiple fields and industries, whether that be like music, art, education, business, and whatnot. So just a curiosity associated with that kind of brings some super nerdiness, but I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, and it's something about a puzzle. Like I love solving something, learning something, and being faced with that challenge to try to see if you can figure it out or kind of put some pieces together, whatever that might be. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love the language there. Peculiar, unique. Yeah. You said the first one. You said eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like you arrived at that conclusion about yourself?
I talk to myself. I try not to answer myself too often. I try to have daily self-assessment, self-evaluation, and really in many ways step outside of myself and look at who I am as a person, as a man, but also understanding kind of that evolution, right? Thinking about the different life experiences that you have faced, from your environment in which you grew up in, your family dynamics, your community, your educational systems, religious systems, etc., to see again how it's created you to be a well-rounded individual. So as I do these evaluations of myself, I kind of self-diagnose myself. You know, it's the things that I learned to say that, man, you know, you've come a long way. Your thinking process is different when it comes to these particular scenarios or situations, and even kind of looking at your social life, thinking about who you keep around you, the company that you keep, how these things have evolved as well. So I would say just kind of looking at that good self-evaluation has been some key things to kind of get me to that conclusion.
Wow. I think I'd be remiss if we didn't continue to dig into that, right? As an advocate of personal growth, self-evaluation is just a part of that journey. And so I'm wondering, what would you say, or how would you say this aspect of your approach to life has contributed to where you are today?
Well, I think when you do self-evaluation and self-assessment of who you are, you hopefully you get to a place where you grow in your identity,
Mm,
right?
come on.
Where you get more comfortable in who you are in your own skin, and you realize that wherever you are on the face of the earth, you know who you are and you believe that you have a calling to make a difference in the world. And a lot of that comes with rejection. It
Mm,
comes with no's, it comes with closed doors, but you again kind of reflect on your different life experiences to understand that that no only gets you to your yes, that
mm,
closed door eventually gets you to that open door, that rejection, only pushes you to to that place of acceptance at some point, because you're being in those spaces where you are predestined to be, right? And so you have to really get to a point where like you don't look at losses as losses, but as lessons. And you're comfortable in your own skin, right? So that now as you kind of elevate in life, that that's what's going to come with the territory. There's going to be people who don't like you. That's okay. There's going to be opportunities that are not for you.
mm.
That's okay. It's going to redirect you to where you need to go. And so, when you apply those principles to yourself, I think it can really create some good liberty for you, that you're free, right? That you're not living under the customs and the norms and expectations of others, the pressures of other imperfect people determining what is best for your life. But you've established for yourself, your values, what you believe.
Come on.
Okay. Those things that you hold near and dear to you, you understand it is going to impact other people, right? You understand your actions have profound consequences, either good or bad, right? So constantly evaluating and thinking about those things, I think are key. And I would say for me, that's been a few things that's kind of helped me to, get to where I've, become in life and where I'm headed. All by the grace of God, obviously. And then to think about again, just, some of the things that I've encountered as well. So, yeah.
Wow. Come on, brother. You teaching this morning. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. These are the exact sorts of things and that we want to lift up on this platform. And I hear that you've cultivated a sort of mindset, and even not just a mindset, but you have a specific worldview that you handle the themes like rejection, trials, tribulation, no's, closed doors, etc. What would you say to someone who hears you but isn't quite where you are, and maybe sees that maybe this is something that they need?
Yeah. One thing that I think is important is like meeting people where they are.
Mm.
That quote, that the cliche, however you want to call it, you see my glory, but you don't know my story.
Come
Right.
on.
I think it's imperative for every person that that we always think about our story, and we all have one. It's roughly 8 billion people on the planet. We all have a story, right? There's this journey we're all going on. And so regardless of where people are in life, I think it's important to remember your story, because it can create humility, and then from there be able to build commonalities and similarities with people across the world. And as you think about your story, it should also put you in a place of being empathetic and an active listener to hear their story, because there's relatability there, right? You may say, "Man, I've been there, I've done that, I understand that, I know what you're going through, but this is how you get through, or this is how you overcome." So I think that's key to relationship building, finding those similarities and commonalities rooted in our humility as beings, right? And then from there, think about practical steps, right? I've first heard your story, right? I can relate, or either I'm open-minded to learn about it. And then from there, how can we kind of implement some practical steps moving forward to reach whatever goals and visions that you have set out for yourself? I think practicality, like it's so key, because we all have great dreams, but we have to write those things out, turn them into goals, and then execute to see these dreams then come into fruition. And I think that as we, work to be more interconnected as people in our world, we understand. I love this idea of really synergy, right? So when you think of synergy, I'm gonna use a choir as an example, right? So I love so many different singers. I'm gonna choose Mariah Carey for this one. So MC, she could sing a solo, right? And the girl can sing historically. She's a legend. She's one of the kids. She's all of that. But as a solo, she can only do what she can do by herself. However, if you accompany Mariah Carey with a choir, right, and they're all in tune, sing the same note in time, right, you have a more profound sound collectively than just MC as a solo artist, right? But if you apply that same concept to us as people, there's great work that we can all do individually.
Come on.
But as an individual, you got to invest in the people because somebody invested into you, right? And so a part of that whole investment piece gives us the chance to really build on this idea of synergy, right? We can all say I'm a great solo artist. I do what I do, but do you have a dream team, right? Is it Mike? Is it Bird? Do you have Magic? Do you have all these guys that collectively create this dream team, right? To where you make a more profound impact in the world. So I think that's key. I think that's important. And I think that's kind of like that last component to relationship building, right? Knowing that there's something that if we team up together, right? Iron sharpens iron. There's much more of a greater impact that we can do collectively than individually. And I know our country, part of our view in the US is more of an individualistic mindset, right? Pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. You got to look out for number one. But other countries really, they exercise this collectivistic mindset, right? Or approach where they look at the benefit of the group at large. And if the group is doing better, if the people are doing better, then as a result, I'm going to be doing better as an individual as well. So I think we got to have a balance of both of those things, right? Because we Dr. King, as one of his great quotes that he had mentioned, he said, whatever affects one directly, it affects all indirectly, right? And so just having this view and this awareness of just others, I think is key to our success as people. So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but yeah.
Come on through, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dr. Randy Whetstone Junior out here delivering. Yes, sir. Come on now. So what I hear, thank you for that, for one. But I wonder if there's even opportunity to go a little further. You mentioned, you see the glory, but you don't know my story. Is there some aspects of your story that you're willing to share that may lend to the lessons that you're sharing?
Yeah. So, I talked a little bit about identity and learning who you are. A part of my story, one area that I think I struggled with as a young teenager and even a young adult in my early 20s was insecurities, right? Acceptance, dealing with peer pressure, but understanding like how much you have to compromise to get the likes of others, right? And we live in this world now of where social media is just so powerful, and people really have their ego stroked many ways, really based on a click or a like or a love, right? Mm-hmm. If you think back for myself 10, 15 years ago, it was still looking for those same clicks and likes, face to face and in person. And so that was a struggle. There was a lot of rejection. I dealt with bullying. I dealt with, just different things, right? My dad was in my life, but wasn't prominent in the home to really teach me really about manhood. So that was an area of insecurity, right? How do I grow as a man when I'm not really seeing it in the house, in the home, things of that nature. Right. And so it really allowed me to get connected with just really other men in different spaces, in church, in education, out in the community, to look, listen, and learn, to see models of manhood. But then again, just in your independence, you sitting down with yourself, being real with yourself, and deciding this is who I am, and this is the man I will be, and this is what I'll represent. And when you take ownership of that, I learned that people respect you, and they can see that, the confidence or the swag or just the realization that you accept you regardless of if no one else does. So, I think insecurity was one area. I think another area, a part of the story was, as a result of looking for acceptance from others, I think you minimize your potential. And so for me, people ask, did you always envision wanting to go to school or getting a doctorate or graduate school? And I'm like, no way. There was a time I didn't even think I would finish undergrad, because I know I never put forth my best effort. I never tapped into my full potential as a teenager and in my early years of college, because, I'm worrying too much about what other people think. And so one of the problems in the Black community, especially with us as Black men, is this idea of like internalized racism. And one of those, one way that we see that, particularly in K-12, with the Black community, is I'm gonna play dumb in school, because good grades or being a nerd or being smart is considered being lame, being a geek, right? Like, I may not be on the varsity team, but I know I could get a 4.0 GPA, but
talk about it.
More popular, the girls, the guys, they like the athletes or the jocks more, not the nerd who's quiet, who can't shoot a jumper, but he's sharp with math. He knows science, right? He knows his history and how it applies to himself. So you play dumb, right? And you minimize your potential, again, because of that pressure. But I think some of these things, they still apply to us in our adult life. Sometimes, or in some ways, we haven't grown up, and we still feel that pressure from society, knowing that you got the gift and talent to do this one thing in life, right? To make a difference. This is how you've been wired. Either you've accepted it or you haven't, or if you have accepted it, you're not willing to cut off whatever that dead weight might be for you to fully flourish in the things that you want to do. So I think, again, all those things kind of tie back into that identity and self-awareness. And again, man, I always give praises to God for whatever has happened in my life and what shall come, because that's my testimony. If it wasn't for him, in some ways I wouldn't be here, or I shouldn't be where I'm at, or have experienced some of the things that I've been blessed to see in life as well. And so, with him, all things are possible.
Come on, sir. Come on, sir. I should just let you go. I should let you go. Listen, in under 20 minutes, I can tell you, Dr. Randy Whetstone Jr., you have been an encouragement to me. You're reiterating a lot of the themes that I've learned, and I'm actively learning, actively applying to my life as well. So thank you for sharing that. And one of the key things that you said there was you talked about cutting off that dead weight. So for anyone listening to this that is hearing what you're saying, but then may have had trouble identifying what really is dead weight, what would you say to that person?
So I think there's 5 key pillars to health and wellness. A mentor had told me this many years ago. And it's your spiritual health, your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health, and your social health. And I think that if you look at those 5 pillars, and when you think about a pillar, it has like a foundational aspect to it, right? A pillar is created to keep you, stable, sturdy, things of that nature. And so when we invest in these 5 areas, intentionally, we should do so knowing that if one pillar is like weaker than the other, it's then going to create some type of imbalance in my life, right? So I think for us to cut off dead weight, we need to look at those 5 pillars and see where we're lacking, why we're lacking, and what we can do to fix that, right? And so if that is your social health, right? If that means the company that you keep, or that relationship that you're in, or some type of family dynamic or relationship that really is impeding your success, maybe it's worth looking at that relationship to perhaps reconcile some things, if possible, or maybe ending relationships altogether. There's a book that I love that I tell people about. It's called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. And Dr. Henry Cloud says that endings are necessary in life. And he uses relationships as his examples: business relationships, personal relationships, romantic relationships. And he says people fear ending things. As I paraphrase, he says people fear ending things in life because they think they're going to suffer from loss. But he said, in fact, endings are necessary and a part of life, because once you cut and end that which is dead, meaning it's not adding to your life, it actually frees you to grow all the more. And he uses, I think, a rose bush as an example. He says when roses are growing, what you have on the rose bush are actually, are thorns. And you have to clip those thorns so that the roses will continue to grow and blossom and be what they are created to be. And the same applies to our life. There are a lot of people who are very thorny, right, in our life. Like, it's just painful talking to them, being around them, dealing with them. But if we cut the thorns, it allows us to grow and remove, that dead weight that may be impacting our social health, right? It's because of that relationship with that man, that woman, that coworker, that friend, that family member that worries me, that gives me anxiety, that keeps me from, focusing on my work, or maybe going to the gym because I'm depressed from this relationship. So now my physical health is impacted because of this area that stressed me out, and my social health, right? So I think looking at one of those pillars and thinking about what's the problem here and what's keeping me from growing. And mental health, as we know, is a hot topic. And so thinking about kind of that battle in between the ears on a day-to-day basis, I think daily check-ins and checkups are important when it comes to our mental health. What type of morning regimen does a person have? What type of self-affirmations do people have to make sure that their mindset is right on not just weekly, monthly, year? It is every single day. And sometimes it's hour by hour, and it's minute by minute. And for some folk, it's second by second. And that small thing can happen in life that just changes their whole mindset for the rest of the day. And so mental health is key as well. So however a person can identify dead weight in maybe those 5 areas, I think that's a start. That's an approach. But there's so many others as well that we can look at in terms of just our habits, and if there are bad habits, things of that nature that we may need to cut out.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And just to reiterate, the 5 pillars again, they were physical.
Yeah, your physical health, your spiritual health, mental health, emotional health, and your social health.
Yes, sir. Love it. I'm in addition to being an advocate of personal growth, an instructor, a coach, etc. I'm also a mental health advocate as well. My wife is in the mental health field. She's a licensed clinical social worker, a practicing therapist, and you talked about those relationships and how varying um, uh, aspects of relationships can cause anxiety and things like that. And you might have to identify, maybe cut things loose, cut situations, circumstances, people. It also reminds me of one of the things that I've grown into is really dealing with the relationship with yourself, which is what everything you've talked about, everything you've said, you touched on it. I just want to say that plainly. That includes your relationship with yourself. That requires that regulation, requires that management, maintenance, the care, the intention. Because most often, like as far as the way I've been wired, I have lived a good portion of my life as what I would describe as a people pleaser, which is not uncommon, not an uncommon idea. But ultimately, I would put others' needs over my own. And not only that, I would find myself, my inner voice was extremely negative, and when I, as far as talking to myself, and so what I had to recognize, and one of the things that ultimately helped me, is that I asked myself, why don't I talk to myself the way that I talk to the people that I love?
Mm.
Because I could give and pour out and love on others, but I struggle to love myself. And so, as anyone listening today, I would say that's one of the early stages of the journey that Dr. Whetstone is talking about. You got to be able to love and embrace yourself. And you already said this. I'm just trying to add my 2 cents from my side of the story, because I'm just resonating with everything that you're sharing. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So on top of all the things that you've already shared as an education professional, as a man that can definitely deliver a message, what keeps Dr. Randy Whetstone Jr. up at night?
For me, it is I talked about puzzles earlier.
Yeah.
And throughout my teaching experience, I've always told my students that, a lot of people, a lot of people around the world grapple with kind of that existential crisis question of, why am I here? Like, why do I exist? What is my purpose in life? Right. So that question and that existential crisis is something, that I can relate with personally. And when you see it or hear it in others, it just does something to me within. And so I've always told my students that, life can be very similar to a puzzle, that you have so many pieces to a puzzle. And on the front of the box, you see the beauty of that image. But the challenge of the puzzle is putting the pieces together to make that image come into fruition, right? And life is very similar, that, we have been fashioned to have something beautiful happen and manifest in our life. But the challenge is putting all the life experience pieces together for it to make sense. Wow. So that when I have a student or when I encounter a person, what I'm learning is all of these different puzzle pieces. And I always have told students that my goal is to be the piece of the puzzle that will connect to your life, that will make that life purpose or the answer to that existential crisis all more clear, right? All the more clear. So that is what keeps me up at night. It's the idea of meeting a person, learning from that person, understanding their story, and then figuring out, how does my life connect to theirs to make their life better? Because I've understood that you really understand life when you understand life isn't all about you, but life is about touching and impacting the life of somebody else. Because it's that quote, I think it's Maya Angelou. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Maya Angelou had said, people won't always remember what you said or what you did to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what keeps me up, man. That's what keeps me excited. That's what keeps me motivated to know that there's one person, there's one soul, right? There's one individual out there who you can connect with, and you never know how that conversation, that interaction, that engagement with that person makes their life better for that day, for a relationship decision, for a career decision, for money and negotiation. I mean, you name it, right? And that process is exciting. It's just something about that, man, that just, it keeps me hungry. It keeps me excited. It's like coaches in sports, man. When they see a player, whether it be Division I sports, you got a freshman coming in, or professional sports, you got a rookie in the league, and that coach sees the potential for that player and how they can develop and become that senior in college or potential MVP in the NBA or NFL. That process is exciting. So for me, that's the thing that keeps me up, keeps me going, and keeps me motivated every day.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, you're hearing all of this from the Dr. Randy Whetstone Jr. What would you say is the best way to get in touch with you, sir?
Probably email. You can email me at randy.whetstone@louisville.edu, or on social media, on Instagram, Dr. Whetstone. So Dr. my last name Whetstone, Same on Twitter, so Dr. Whetstone, and then on Facebook, Randy Whetstone Junior, LinkedIn, Randy Whetstone Junior as well. So I think that's all the social medias I think I'm connected with. I haven't ventured out yet with any TikTok or any of that. Maybe one of these days I got to catch up.
I hear you. I hear you. Big respect to you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom. Just in the last 30 minutes, you packed in so many lessons. So, just as we wrap up here, do you have any final thoughts, any final words?
Yeah, I think what's important for us as people is to establish life rules, or like the law for your life, right? Meaning, if you think about law, it's needed to govern people, right? And if someone breaks the law, then there are painful consequences that we might experience. And I think the same applies for us as individuals. And so if you don't have rules for your life, principles that govern you, doesn't matter the day, doesn't matter the situation, doesn't matter the scenario, I encourage you to do that. My 3 rules for my life, one is to love everyone unconditionally, right? Embrace the challenges and obstacles in life. And then thirdly, to live freely. And those 3 things simply mean, to love people unconditionally. It doesn't matter who a person is, loving a person not because of who they are, but in spite of who they are. And then secondly, embrace the challenges in life, because challenges are inevitable. So embrace the challenge, because I know that whatever I have to go through will only make me stronger and better and wiser. And then lastly, living freely, because I don't want anything to shackle me in life, anything that will handcuff me to keep me from being my full self. So those are my 3 goals. Those are my 3 rules, rather, for my life that I pray for and I apply each day. So I guess I'll leave it with that. 3 rules for your life, and stay committed to those things, and journal, reflect, and see what difference it's made in your life moving forward.
There you have it. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to the Brothers in Influence podcast, where we stand to encourage, inspire, and add value in the areas of life, leadership, and community. As you've heard, Dr. Randy Whetstone Jr. definitely delivered on that today. All right. Appreciate you hanging with us. We're out.